Hey, what's going on, everyone? And it's Brendan here with some Weaving Soul musings. And today I just want to talk about principles and values. And there's in all our workshops that we do here, we go by a set of principles. And these principles that we go by are actually, some people call them core values, and these are developed to support optimally growth in the family unit, and that these principles, when embodied, become a way of being actually. And it's such a beautiful thing to see them when they start to unfold in a workshop and they start to become embodied. But I sort of want to speak to the layers of what that does. Is that when we implement principles or values in it could be a workplace or it could be a workshop, is that when everyone's living and implementing those values, there's usually some sort of harmonic resonance, or there's a way of being where I can be with you, but also be with me. And so there's this, and that sort of speaks really to our first principle that we use in our workshops, which is one of mutual support and cooperation. And I guess before I talk to that principle a little, the first principle we always talk to is choice. A lot of the time in life we don't really have true choice, and so we really advocate for choice in our workshops, and that if something's invited, that everyone always has choice, even the facilitators, and that we always advocate for the no. And when we advocate for the no, it creates a layer of safety. And the interesting thing about choice is that, if we say yes and we really mean no, it creates a split between the body and mind, or mind body, and as we know, mind body is interconnected. It's not mind and body, it's mind body, and one impacts the other. I'm very closely related to osteopathic principles, really, where structure governs function and vice versa. So choice is a really big thing, and if we end up saying yes and really mean no, what can happen is that it creates a tension within our nervous system, and that is felt. And that's felt in a larger group process, in a larger group field. And until it's named and acknowledged, it stays held as that tension. And it can be really hard for nervous systems to settle, because our nervous systems are going to pick up on that. So choice is really important, and authentic no is really acknowledged and welcomed. So following on and touching back into the mutual support and cooperation, it kind of follows on from choice, because to be mutually supportive, I need to make a choice. I need to make a choice is, actually, can I step in and support this person just now without sacrificing my own needs? So that's the first part, mutual support. Can I tend to my own needs first so that I can really show up to be supportive? Mutual support. And that's something we really encourage. And the second piece to that principle is cooperation. And so cooperation is around, can I have this attitude of non-judgment and self-compassion for my own belief systems, even though I might not agree with someone else's, and can I put them aside so that I can step into the supportive role? So can I be cooperative, even though I might be challenged within my own sort of inner belief systems and things like that? So that's that principle. And again, mutual support and cooperation, again, if we authentically do that, it creates this layer of beautiful settling in the field of the workshop and the participants. But if it's done in a way that is inauthentic, it can create this tension once again. And so as facilitators in our workshop, we're always looking out for that tension, and always looking out for the rises in the nervous systems and things like that, which is information's, maybe something hasn't been named. So these are some of the first two principles that we work with in our workshops and our therapeutic settings here at Weaving Soul. The next principle that we work with is self-care. And there's a lot of talk about self-care in the wellbeing industry and things like that, and it can sometimes get brushed over as like this sort of, this token thing that we do, self-care. But what we say in our workshops is that, we all have a self-care system. So sometimes that self-care system is part of some of our defenses that are protective parts that show up. That's all part of self-care. And when we can name that, it can decompress the energy behind those parts sometimes, and again help the nervous system settle so that we can continue our process. But the other part of self-care, of course, is that, is around nourishment. And sometimes when we speak to this principle, barriers to nourishment can show up. Barriers to nourishment can be a range of things, but it can be someone who may not eat when they need to eat, not really trusting in their primary impulse. So we spend a bit of time just really, again, advocating for people to connect in to their bodies, to their sensations, and really check in, what do I need for myself just now? Do I need water? Do I need nourishment? Do I need to sleep? Sometimes we welcome people to have sleep in our workshops. It's a beautiful thing. So it's true self-care. So that's one of our principles. The next principle that we work with is called the pause. And the pause is really around self-regulation. And the way that we do this is that we get people to really check in with their level of activation in their bodies. And if it feels too overwhelming, we really invite calling a pause. And this is for facilitators as well. Can we call a pause and say, something going on here, I need to take care of something, I need to take care of something in myself, or, and so it's really role modeling that as well. And the other part to that, of course, is that sometimes, when we're exploring things in our workshops or in therapeutic settings and something comes up that's maybe pre-verbal, we don't always have words. So we always invite a gesture that someone might do if they need to call a pause. We really honor the pause, and we really, in that moment, it's sort of ties in with self-care. It's like, okay, so I've called a pause, what's needed just now for that person? And then to the best of our ability, we meet that, and then we move on with the process. So the pause really is a way to keep things nice and slow and coherent. Because what we know is when our nervous systems really speed up and really start to get into that fight, flight, and edging on overwhelm, what happens is that things can get incoherent. Things can get missed, and things can get a little bit confusing, and all those, I guess incoherent is probably the correct term there. And incoherent just means, it's really hard to make sense of what's happening. But when we slow things down, when things can go really slowly, we can really stay connected in our somatic experience, in our body, and also in our thoughts and beliefs and all of the rest of it. So we can really hold this witness type view. Now, the interesting thing about slowing down, of course, is that when we slow down and when we can stay slow, we get deeper in contact with our midbrain, our limbic system, which allows us to feel more. So sometimes in the therapeutic setting, particularly, when we slow down and things start to arise because we're feeling more, it can feel quite intense. And so sometimes we need to sort of explore a little balance with that and sort of explore this leading edge of change where maybe there's a bit of fight flight and then a bit of settling, and so we sort of pendulate between the two. And we really want to work with where the person's at, just there. But going slow is interesting, and in our modern day world, we're going so fast all the time. We're really working at speed in our modern day-to-day life, and so to slow down means to feel more, to stay connected. And it's a real art form in today's world. And so always invite self-compassion around that. What does it take? And it's maybe an invitation you'd like to take today. Is what does it take to slow? What does it take to just be slow? can feel that in my own body just now, so as I named that. And so that's 4 principles. We've got, this choice, mutual support and cooperation, self-care and self-regulation. And then we, in our workshops, as craniosacral therapists and somatic practitioners, we really work a lot with touch. And so we have this principle of what we call contact, and there's 3 layers to it. And these 3 layers of contact, one is a craniosacral touch. It's a very light touch, and we do that in such a way that we name everything that we're doing, and we always asking permission and getting acknowledgement and consent along the way as we come into relationship, into contact. And that's a really important piece, and we teach people how to do that in a very authentic and coherent way. So that's one layer. The second layer is brief, frequent eye contact. So when we're in a group setting particularly, if we make brief, frequent eye contact around the room every so often, every couple of minutes or so, about 2.5 minutes is optimum. It doesn't mean we need to connect with eyes, but it's just glancing around the room. What it does is it actually unites our collective nervous system, or connects the field, is another way of saying that. We stay in a more connected state. So it's another layer of support and another layer of connection that we really bring into our workshops. And so the third layer of that contact principle is a little bit more firmer contact. And as facilitators, we really invite, hey, if you actually need support, are you able to reach out for it? Are you able to name, hey, actually, I would like someone's hand to hold just now, and all the research around co-regulation with another nervous system. Sometimes if someone's feeling quite activated or alone, and just a little bit of support, and particularly a bit of hands-on support, can really help things stay grounded and connected. And it's a beautiful thing to witness. So that's sort of 5 principles. And then our last one is, well, sort of 2 more, is confidentiality. And that's just a given. Everything that happens in our workshop stays confidential. People can talk about their own experience all they like. They might say, oh, I did this workshop and did this and we did that, and this was my experience. So we really invite people to talk about their own experience, but they can't talk about others' experiences unless they have their express permission. So that's held really strictly. And of course, one of our key principles that we begin with is welcoming. How are we welcomed? And sometimes we do this thing where we talk about happy dog consciousness. What's it like to be welcomed in a way that is like a happy dog greeting you. So we do this little thing around that, and that's a beautiful welcoming as well. So that's sort of a first layer of principles that we work with in our workshops. And these principles, again, they were developed by a beautiful man named Raymond Castellina, and to support their bonding and enhancement of attachment clinic in the States, and which further led on to a development of what's called a process workshop, or WIMS around process workshop, which I now facilitate. But I tend to bring these principles in with all the work that I do. I find that they're super supportive, and it brings me to sort of this next point that I'd like to discuss, is that, what does it take to set up that container with these principles? Because I've given you an explanation around the why we use these principles, and that's the first sort of layer to that. This can be really helpful. And then the second layer is, how do we role model these principles? How do we role model them in a way that is inviting and opens doors for others to start using them and bringing them into their own process during a workshop? And we're always encouraging that. And as that occurs, what happens is the embodiment of these principles start to occur. And when we really embody values or principles in our life, they just become a way of being. They don't tend to need to do anything. They're just there, they're right there, and a way of being. So that's sort of a little bit of a layered process. And I think sometimes I find it really sad when I go into an organization and they have these beautiful core values and they're not modeled, or they're just not embodied at all. And so that sometimes I can feel a lot of sadness around that. And when we can really slow down and really take our time to explore and understand the why behind these principles and values that we put in place, rather than just a slogan or something that feels good or looks good. It's a embodied process, to truly embody principles. So and it provides a deep sort of layer to a safe container, a safe therapeutic container. And also that I like to call them the invisible structures. They're the invisible structures that are in play in all of our workshops, and they create a level of holding of deep relational, a deep relational holding that can be where we can explore things and we can do things and we can check things out within that space. So it's a beautiful thing. Just wanted to share a little bit about those principles. There are some other principles that we hold as sort of the second tier of principles, and they're very closely related to Hakomi principles. If you've sort of ever delved into the work of Hakomi, so we have non-violence and mind-body holism, and all these beautiful terms. Organicity, which is organicity is like what emerges within the container, what wants to organically rise up and wants to show itself to be worked with today. So organicity is such a beautiful principle, and as our biological organisms that we are, what wants to emerge, what wants to grow. We're always going to aim for health. So health is always there in the system. Sometimes we just need a space where it can be given the opportunity to emerge, and so the leader need to change and watch things transform, and it's a real beautiful thing. So that is my musing on principles, and hope you're taking something away from that. And feel free to leave a comment, or if you'd want me to speak to any other topics. I'm going to do some more videos talking more about the nervous system. I spoke a little bit and touched a little bit about that on this video. So I'm going to do a bit of a detailed video on the nervous system and trauma, and talk to why somatic approaches are sort of growing in popularity, and sort of the modern approach to therapeutic resolution of trauma. So thank you, and whatever you're doing today, I hope you're having a beautiful day out there, and bye for now. That's my musing for today.